వారు ఆశ్రమంలోనే అతనికి ఇష్టం.
Hello, good morning, all of you. Hello, good morning, all of you. Am I audible? Can you all hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you all see the screen?
Yes, sir.
I'm sharing my screen.
Yeah.
Everybody can see the slides.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good morning, all of you.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Last class, we have discussed about the aqueous vehicles which are used in parental preparations. Today, we have to start from non-aqueous vehicles used in parental preparations. Hope what I remember is correct. Yes. Do you all remember where we stopped? Have we covered these water miscible vehicles? Yes, we have done already this water miscible vehicles, ethyl alcohol. And I think we have to start from water immiscible vehicles, right? Yes or not? Somebody answer me.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sai Varshit, only 18 people are present till now.
Yes, sir. నేను చెప్తాను సార్ ఒకసారి వాళ్ళు
అందరూ వచ్చిన తర్వాత స్క్రీన్ షాట్ తీసుకోవడం మర్చిపో.
ఓకే సార్ డెఫినెట్.
Okay, we all know that all parenteral formulations are formulated with a suitable vehicle. Among the vehicles or solvents used for parenteral preparations, we have two categories. First one is water miscible vehicles or aqueous vehicles, and second one is water immiscible vehicles, right? So today we have to start from water immiscible vehicles. So among 8 of oily injections of British Pharmacopoeia. So what they mean to say here is, as per the official monograph of British Pharmacopoeia, there are around 8 injection preparations which involves oily vehicles as solvents. So among these 8 preparations, all are simple solutions. For example, we have active pharmaceutical ingredient in injection formulation like a deoxycartone acetate injection, and we also have hydroxyprogesterone injection, estradiol benzoate injection, etc. under this category. So these are all simple solutions. So the solvents which are suitable are oils like fixed oils, which are normally suitable ester forms, or sometimes they may be mixture of both fixed oil and combination with their esters, right? So you all know what is the meaning of suitable ester, right? So basically the oils are fatty components, right? So they also exist sometimes in a form of esters, right? So that is, if I'm not mistaken, that is about their form in triglyceride ester of fatty acid, right? If I'm not mistaken, right? So either it may be a fixed oil itself, or sometimes it may be a combination of a fixed oil along with its suitable ester form. And these type of vehicles. Any question there? Somebody want to talk? Yes. Anybody has any question? Okay. So these type of vehicles are suitable. For these type of vehicles, suitable alcohols may be included at times in the solvents. For example, for parenteral preparations containing deoxycartone acetate or estradiol benzoate or progesterone injections, which are official under BP. So I already told you these examples, what I have taken, all are from British Pharmacopoeia. So these are all official under the monograph of British Pharmacopoeia. So it is not mandatory we have to restrict to only these examples. You can also very much refer other pharmacopoeias also. I already told you. You can refer Indian Pharmacopoeia or United States Pharmacopoeia or even National Formulary. You can refer all those official pharmacopoeias and go through their official monographs under injections. So you can check what are all the different solvents used for different types of active pharmaceutical ingredients. And that will be helpful as your further information in this regard. So so to move on, next we have these fixed oils must not contain any traces of mineral oils or solid paraffins, right? The fixed oils should be in the form of pure fixed oils itself. So they should not contain any traces of impurities like traces of mineral oils. Mineral oil, a very good example is liquid paraffin, right? Or even it should not contain any traces of solid paraffins, right? Because these will not be metabolized by the body and they cause tissue reactions and sometimes they even cause tumors. And they all should be, in case if you are using fixed oils, they all should be free from rancidity, right? So they all should not have free fatty acids, and they must be basically free from causing any sort of irritation. So for this, we have a good example for fixed oil, that is arachis oil, which is used as a solvent or vehicle in parenteral preparations containing oily vehicles. And arachis oil is used in formulation of injections containing active ingredients like dimercaprol, and it is also used in propyliodone injection, which is official in BP. And these arachis oil has a disadvantage that it gets thickened. It will be thickening slowly on exposure to air, and sometimes they may have a tendency to become rancid. And to avoid this problem, we have to go for alternatives. So instead of arachis oil, you can alter it by using, or you can replace arachis oil by using sesame oil. And this is most suitable as it contains natural substances that will prevent rancidification or rancidity, or getting the oil degraded, as in case of arachis oil. And we can also use, instead of arachis oil, we can also use cottonseed oil, or we can also use maize oil as alternate in case arachis oil is creating problem for your formulation. And the sensitivity to these oils may cause problems. So you have to keep that point in mind while formulating parenteral preparations. Excuse me. And next we have esters as examples, another examples. And these esters give less viscous preparations that are easier to inject, especially in cold weather. And these esters causes reduction in length of action of depot preparations, which has been found when ethyl oleate has been used instead of this oil. And the maximum prolongation effect is obtained from the depot if it is spherical droplets, and absorption is probably more rapid from less viscous ester because of their tendency to spread and offer a larger surface to the tissue fluid after their administration. And these esters must be free from peroxide, since they are the intermediate in the auto-oxidative and rancidification of oils and fatty acids. And these peroxides are undesirable in case of injections, especially when the medication or the active pharmaceutical ingredient which is present in the formulation is more susceptible to oxidation. And for this category, we have few examples which are also official under British Pharmacopoeia, like calciferol injection BP, and this also requires storage in ampules, and from which air has been replaced by an inert gas during its package. Just give me 1 second. Yes. Can you all hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
And they must be free from peroxide, as I told you. And in this case, to avoid this, they require storage in ampules from which the air has been replaced by filling with an inert gas before sealing the container. I mean the ampules. Next, we have alcohol. The alcohol may be used in addition to oil if the solubility of the drug in oil is not enough to obtain the desired concentration. So this is when you are using alcohol, like in case if the oil itself is not sufficient, uh, you cannot make a desired concentrated injection preparation by using the oil. In that case, you can use alcohol as a co-solvent, right? And then you can dissolve and make a desired concentrated preparation as per the procedure. And normally ethyl alcohol or benzyl alcohol can be used in the concentrations that are harmless and non-irritant when they are administered by intramuscular route. And others include oils like almond oil, poppy seed oil, isopropyl myristate, and polyethylene oleic triglycerides. So these are all a few other examples for oils which are used as vehicles or solvents for parenteral preparations. And then we have to know a little information in depth about the process called osmosis, right? So can anybody guess why we need to know about osmosis?
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Can somebody answer me why we need to know about osmosis? So who is there? Whom should I ask? Vinay. Vinay is there?
Sir.
Vinay.
Sir.
మనం osmosis గురించి ఎందుకు తెలుసుకోవాలి? What is the necessity for us to know osmosis?
Sir, concentration of solvents.
Concentration of solvent is your answer. Sirisha?
Yes, sir.
Sirisha, can you answer? Can you share your answer? Sirisha, can you hear me? Okay, Sirisha must be sleeping. Let us not disturb her. Varun? Varun, can you answer me?
Yes, sir.
Can you guess why we need to know about osmosis? No idea. Srikanth?
సార్ పేరెంటల్ ప్రిపరేషన్స్ కాబట్టి అవి ఆస్మాటిక్ నేచర్ ఉండాలి సార్, ఎందుకంటే డైరెక్ట్ బ్లడ్ లోకి వెళ్తాయి కాబట్టి.
Correct. You are partially correct, right? The exact reason for this is you have to maintain isotonicity, right? We have discussed already, right? Initial stage of this topic discussion, we have already discussed that the parenteral preparations or injectable preparations should be isotonic, yes or not? So isotonicity is totally based on the osmotic pressure, yes or not? Right? That is the reason we need to know a little about osmosis, right? Of course, you must have studied already about osmosis and what are all the process involved, what are the different types and how they are altered, everything. But keeping your parenteral preparation in criteria, so you have to check how this osmosis is involved in the formulation aspects of parenteral preparations. Well, when a solvent passes through a semi-permeable membrane from a dilute solution into a more concentrated one, with the result that the concentration become equalized or the equilibrium exists, right? The osmotic pressure is the pressure which is responsible for the above phenomena, right? Here, whatever the phenomena I have read just now, the main reason for maintaining equilibrium is osmotic pressure, right? So it is caused and varies based on or depending upon the type of solute or type of active ingredients or excipients what you have used in the vehicle, right? So this is little information. And next is if the solute is a non-electrolyte. I already told you the osmotic pressure depends upon the type of solute or type of ingredients used. In case if the solute is in the form of non-electrolyte, its solution will contain only molecules, right? Non-electrolyte means unionized form, right? You understand what is the meaning of non-electrolyte? It cannot undergo ionization, right? It cannot form ions, right? So that's what we can call it as non-electrolyte, right? And if your solute or active ingredient is a non-electrolyte, its solution will contain only molecules, and the osmotic pressure of the solution will definitely vary only with the concentration of the solute. You understand that? Right? This point
Yes,
is
sir.
clear. Yeah. If the
Yes,
solute
sir.
is an electrolyte, so previously we have discussed about non-electrolyte containing solutions, right? So if the solute is electrolyte in a parenteral solution, its solution will contain ions, and the osmotic pressure will be varied here also, along with the concentration and the degree of dissociation of the solute. So here you understand what is the meaning of dissociation. If the compounds, if the solute is having a property of converting itself into electrolyte, right? It is undergoing ionization, yes or not? They form ions. If it is an electrolyte, they definitely form ions, cations and anions. And its solution will contain both the ions, cations and anions. And in this case, the osmotic pressure will vary with the concentration and degree of dissociation, right? With the concentration of the ions from the solute and the extent of dissociation. The degree of dissociation means the extent of dissociation. What extent it has been converted into ions, that also matters here, right? So that's what they say. It will, the pressure, the osmotic pressure will vary along with the concentration of the solute and degree or extent of dissociation of the solute, right? So if the degree of dissociation is greater, or the greater number of ions liberated, here they are mentioned as particles, we have to consider these particles as ions, right? If the degree of dissociation is greater, or if the number of ions dissociated or number of ions formed are greater, then obviously the osmotic pressure also will be greater, right? It is directly proportional. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Now we shall look into what is isoosmotic and what is isotonic. So here in this case, the terms isoosmotic and isotonic are not to be considered as same or equivalent, right? You should keep in mind isoosmotic means different, isotonic means different, right? So in the, to explain this, if a cell is in contact with the solution that has the same osmotic pressure as that of the cell contents, there will be no net gain or no net loss of water by either solution, provided the cell membrane is impermeable to all the solutes present. So you understand the concept here? Suppose if you consider a cell which is in contact with the solution, and the solution has the same osmotic pressure as that of the cell contents, and in that case, in that condition, there will not be any net gain or any net loss of water by either solutions. Either solutions in the sense the solution outside the cell and the solution inside the cell, provided the cell membrane is impermeable to all the solutes present, right? This is the basic condition. Then, as the volume of the cell contents remains unchanged, the tone or normal state of the cell is maintained. The tone in the sense, not the tone like what we use for voice, right? The tonicity, right? The tone here means the tonicity, right? The tone or normal state of the cell is maintained, and the solution in contact with the cell may be considered not only as being isoosmotic with the solution in the cell, but also it is considered as being isotonic with it. So if one or more of the solutes are in contact with the membrane, which can pass through it, the volume of the cell content will change, thus altering the tone of the cell. You understand this? So in these both cases, the difference is the cells which are passing through the membrane, right? So if the cell passes through the cell membrane, then there will be change in the concentrations. If they are not passing, then there won't be any change in the concentration, right? So in this case, the solutions may be isoosmotic, yet not to be isotonic, right? So you understand now the difference between isotonic and isoosmotic. So isoosmotic conditions, the membrane is permeable to solutes, right? The solutes move from one region to another region, one solution to another solution. Whereas in case of isotonic, the membrane is not permeable to solutes, and there won't be any movement of solute particles from one solution to another solution. Is that clear, Soumya?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is a basic difference between isotonic and isoosmotic. Now we shall look into the preparation of isotonic solutions. So to prepare an isotonic solution, we need to do the calculations required for making the formulation isotonic, right? And the calculation or the preparation of isotonic solutions involves different methods. You must have studied already these methods. Srikanth, have you heard about all these methods? You must have studied in your prerequisite courses. Srikanth,
Yes,
are you
sir.
there?
Yes, sir.
You have listened, you have studied about this comparison of freezing point
Studied, sir.
and the freezing point of blood, serum, and lacrimal fluid is given as minus 0.52,
Fine.
right? So
Yes,
based
yes,
on
sir.
this factor, 1 gram molecular weight of any non-electrolyte which is dissolved in 1000 grams of water, then the freezing point of freezing point depression is about 1.86. For example, you can look into this problem. The problem is given as how many grams of boric acid, which is having a molecular weight 61.8, are needed to make a solution in water isotonic, right? So this is the question. This is the problem given, right? So here the molecular weight of boric acid is given as 61.8. So 61.8 is equivalent to 1.86. Therefore, X is how much, right? So in this case, the X is given as 0.52, and therefore X can be calculated as minus 0.52 into, this is not star, this should be a multiplication here, 61.8 upon minus 1.86. And therefore, X is given as 17.3 grams in 1000 grams of water. That means if you are preparing a solution of boric acid, a solution of 1000 grams or 1000 ml, because it is water. So you need to take 17.3 grams of boric acid to make isotonic, to make it isotonic, right? So this problem is clear how to calculate.
Yes, sir.
So next we have electrolyte. The osmotic pressure depends more on the number than the kind of particle, or the substances that dissociates have a tonic effect that increases with the degree of dissociation. The greater the dissociation, the smaller the quantity required to produce any given osmotic pressure, right? So what is the role of electrolytes? Electrolytes we already discussed, right, earlier. The osmotic pressure depends more on the number than the kind of particles. Number is important. Number of what? The number of electrolytes which are dissociated, right? The number of electrolytes which are released, which are formed from the molecule of solute. So it depends more on the number than the kind of the particle, or the kind of substances that dissociates have a tonic effect that increases with the degree of dissociation. The greater the dissociation, the greater will be the formation of electrolytes, and then the smaller the quantity required to produce any given osmotic pressure. Excuse me. Then the dissociation factor is given as I. We may use the following values which are given as standards. The substances that dissociate into 2 ions, the standard value given is 1.8. And for the substances, these substances are nothing but solutes what we are using in parenteral preparations, right? Don't get confused about what are these substances, right? And the substances that dissociate into 3 ions, the value given is 2.6. The substances that dissociate into 4 ions, the value given is 3.4. And for the substances that dissociate into 5 ions, right, the dissociation factor value is given as 4.2. So these are all I values for these type of substances which can liberate 2 ions, 3 ions, 4 ions, 5 ions respectively, right? So we can keep that for standard reference. Now we shall look into this problem. How many grams of sodium chloride, which is having a molecular weight 58.5, are needed to make water isotonic, right? So you can do the calculation. 58.5 divided by 1.8, that gives minus 1.86, right? In this case, X is given as 0.52. So X is given as minus 0.52, and that is equal to 9.09 grams in 1000 grams of water. So therefore, 9.09 grams of sodium chloride is required to make the solution isotonic, right? Is that clear? Any question here? Prasad, are you there? Prasad? Prasad, are you there? Prasad?
Yes, sir.
Is that clear? The calculation is clear to you?
Okay, sir.
Narasimha? Narasimha? Narasimha, are you there? Likita?
Yes, sir.
Is it clear?
Yes. Sir?
These 2 types of calculation is clear to you?
Yes, sir.
Deepika, any question? Deepika, your voice is too low.
Yes, sir. None, sir.
Deepika,
I'm there, sir.
maybe your signal problem, right? Check your
Sir.
signal strength. Your voice is dragging. So maybe we have another 4 minutes to complete this session. You can rejoin. We can continue for another 10 minutes once if the session got expires. So next we have hypotonic, right? So we have discussed about how to calculate ingredients required for making a solution isotonic. Now we shall look into the meaning of hypotonic, right? Hypo means less, right? The solutions with lower osmotic pressure than the blood are considered as hypotonic. Hypertonic, right? The solutions with higher osmotic pressure than the blood is considered as hypertonic. So now you can guess what is isotonic. Can anybody tell me what is isotonic? I have told you
Same
what is,
osmotic pressure.
sorry,
Same
Same
osmotic
osmotic
pressure.
pressure is great.
same osmotic pressure. A solution with same osmotic pressure as that of the blood, right? Blood and plasma or body fluids is considered as isotonic, right? And in this case, whether it is hypotonic or hypertonic, both are considered as paratonic. Para means beyond, other than, right? Not the required one. Para means something else, right? Paratonic means it is not isotonic. If it is hypotonic, it is also not isotonic. If it is hypertonic, then also it is not isotonic, right? Both are considered as paratonic. So, well, a very hypotonic solution, large volume of less hypotonicity, then which is administered, then it results in swelling of RBC, and sometimes the red blood corpuscle cells will burst. And this process is called hemolysis, right? So this is what happens when you inject a hypotonic solution. Hypo means a solution which is having less osmotic pressure than blood. If you inject this type of formulation or in this type of parenteral preparation, it may cause hemolysis. So hemolysis is nothing but the breakdown or bursting of the red blood corpuscles, RBC cells, right? This is followed by initial swelling of RBC. And the hypotonic solution, this swelling, this hemolysis is irreversible and dangerous in case if large number of cells are involved in hemolysis. Similarly, when you consider hypertonic solutions, when they are administered without damage to RBC, the RBCs shrink, but they assume their normal shape when osmotic pressure returns to normal. This is reversible. If you use hypertonic solution as an injection, what happens? Basically, the RBC will shrink, but they assume their normal shape when osmotic pressure is maintained back to normal. So although isotonic solutions are preferred, hypertonic solutions are normally used, since preparing isotonic solutions of many medications may require large volume of water, which would be difficult for administration by parenteral route, right? So this is about hypotonic and hypertonic, right? So next we have hypertonic are injections by IV. They are administered by intravenous route slowly to ensure rapid dilution in blood and minimal effect on the red blood cell corpuscle cells. And certain injections